So, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the second of Volunteering Victoria's Tech for Good webinars on technology that's making a positive difference in the world that we live in that we volunteer and that we lead volunteers in. Today, we've got Victor Lee, who's the Chief Executive Officer of Communiteer. He's got 25 years experience in the volunteering sector as a volunteer and as a volunteer manager from both a corporate and an NFP perspective. Previously, Victor has been the Chief Operating Officer at Australia's most accessed mental health service for young people and their parents. And huge congratulations again to Communiteer, who were recently voted as the world's best digital solution for government and citizen engagement in 2019 by the World Summit Awards, and represented Australia in a field of over 400 other online solutions from 182 countries. Victor, thanks for being with us this afternoon and for being part of our Tech for Good series.
Yeah, glad to be here, Scott. Thank you.
So tell us about your, a bit more about yourself and about your product. Over to you, really.
Yeah, sure. Actually, well, let's just make sure the tech is working, right? Because that would be the most ironic thing. Let me just share my screen if that's okay. Can you see my screen, Scott, just as a double check?
That's great. Perfect.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, so lovely to be here. So just a bit of the background about myself. So that's my son, by the way. That's Ethan. He's no longer 3 months old, but he is our youngest volunteer ever. But he's one of the reasons why we're doing what we're doing is for the next generation and for the impact we're trying to create. But just about me, I'm a bit of a banana myself. So why I say that is I was born in Hong Kong. I came here as a migrant. I grew up here, so kind of yellow on the outside, white on the inside. And I really relate to a lot of people who are going through some isolation because of, language barrier or cultural barrier, whatever it may be. But a bit about my background. So I've spent about 10 years in the corporate sector, hence the tie, in change management as a management consultant first. And I was also the guy who calls up a lot of charities kind of 4 weeks before Christmas. And I go, have I got a deal for you? I've got 60 people ready to go for volunteering. I know kind of after I've kind of gone over to the other side of not-for-profit sector, that's probably the worst time to engage with a VIO because they're actually in high demand. So since about 12 years ago, I've actually worked in a variety of different not-for-profit organizations. So as Scott mentioned in the intro, I was the Chief Operating Officer of Reach Out, which specializes in youth mental health. Then I ran a training organization for aged care and disability sector for a little while. Then the peak body for the New South Wales social housing peak. And then most recently, before I worked on Communiteer full time, I was a general manager for No More Legal Service, which provides free legal advice nationally to survivors of institutional child sex abuse. So that was a pretty confronting task. I guess, look, Communiteer is all about cross-sector collaboration, and the inspiration really came from two parts of my career. One, when I guess I quit the corporate sector and tried to find a role in the not-for-profit sector, and that actually took me a lot longer than I thought to find something aligned with my purpose, which I can really relate to the volunteering sector. And then secondly, when I was running No More Legal Service, how different not-for-profit organizations are generally trying to collaborate with one another to minimize potential trauma to our clients and provide more holistic service. And I guess this is why Communiteer is here. And we're trying to bring corporates, not-for-profits, and change makers together to really amplify our collective impact. So I guess, look, I'll jump straight into it. I'm sure Scott is going to help me fan up some questions, so feel free to type as much as you can. But I guess the main reason why we're here today, we're really keen to share what we're doing as a social enterprise is, I think, look, I don't want to go into COVID-19 for too long. I think everyone's kind of got a lot of news. I think most of the attention at the moment is about dealing with the direct implication of the pandemic from a health perspective. And we've spoken to quite a few dozens of our charity partners on the ground, and we're seeing a lot of social issues emerging at a grassroots level. And these are the top three. One is people are becoming more socially isolated, and those who are already isolated before the crisis are becoming even more so. And mental health and well-being issues are definitely on the rise. Two, we know a lot of charities who are under increased demand and stress. On one hand, they're getting their core services disrupted because of, I guess, lack of funding and lack of volunteer participation due to social distancing. At the same time, there's an increased demand from, I guess, the clients that usually surface because of those mental health issues I mentioned earlier. The third thing, which I actually think from a not-for-profit's perspective is going to do us, most medium to long-term damage is that kind of lack of social awareness or public awareness on the issues we've been advocating for years. They're being overshadowed in mainstream news because of, COVID-19. I still remember a period of time when it was like a leaderboard every day, who's been infected, what's the number, what's the death toll. And I can't even remember the last time I heard some news about the bushfire, which was supposedly the greatest natural disaster in the last 10 years, but that only happened 2 months ago. And we haven't really heard much about it in the mainstream news that much. So I guess for me, I guess from a volunteering perspective, we know that the participation rate has also been dropping, again, due to social distancing. That ranges from anywhere between 50 to 8%. We only know of a handful of VIOs that have managed to revamp their services to meet the social distancing practices. But having said that, many are giving online a go. And then finally, the corporates that we work with, most of their programs have come to a halt. I guess coming from, making sure that the staff's physical well-being are taken care of. But that also means that there's additional strain on the charities that usually support. So that's kind of what we see in the sector at the moment. From our point of view, I guess, we ask ourselves the question, what if we can connect people who are looking for meaningful things to do and to match them with charities that are desperately looking for help. So our theory is, people matching, helping charities, which in turn helps more people that they normally serve. Better yet, what if we can do all this virtually and increase social connectedness at the same time, at a time when isolation is on the rise? And that's really why Communiteer was born. Communiteer is a crowdsourcing platform that connects, engages, and mobilizes change makers to tackle the world's greatest challenges. And at the moment, we are facing a kind of slow-moving natural disaster, I call it, that really will challenge the foundation of a society. And I guess in response to this, Communiteer is launching a campaign called Virtually Together, which is what the presentation is about. But to basically use technology to tackle social isolation. But we can talk about what it is and how you get involved a bit later. First, I want to share a bit of our kind of tech and how it works, and how our learnings in a virtual volunteering space first. So first, in terms we promote cross-sector collaboration through crowdsourcing. Essentially, we work with 4 types of stakeholders. So partners like Volunteering with Victoria. We also work with the New South Wales, ACT, and Tasmania peak bodies. And we really want to connect like-minded organizations, people together so that we can amplify the impact. So we work with charities, so, pardon the jargon, but, by that we mean we work with for-purpose organizations, so not-for-profit organizations, charities, they're all in that mix. We work with corporates, which include universities, education institutions, and, local councils as well. And then finally, the change makers, which largely are made up of volunteers, but I guess we call them change makers because we believe there's more ways for people to do good instead of just volunteering, although that's kind of the bulk of it. I guess our philosophy is if you are, I guess, coming on board to our platform and engaging in what we do, you believe in our philosophy that it's about creating a shared service, a sharing economy where every organization that joins us also understands the power of collective action. And we would work with you to onboard your existing volunteers and supporters so that kind of everyone's bringing their volunteers into one pool. And thereby when a single charity like yours have a need, there's a bigger pool to tap into with faster response time and a much more highly accurate way to find the right person at the right time. Second, and I'm just being completely transparent, we started back in 2016 and we kind of learned our way through getting to this point where we call more of a holistic approach. When we first started, we were more on the kind of participation side, which is we used to call ourselves Air Tasker for Good. So we kind of got skill-based volunteers on one side and we got projects from charities on the other. The experience was good. And in the first 6 months, we actually completed over 120 projects, which is not bad. But again, what we saw was there was low retention rate. And because it was transactional, people treat it as a transactional engagement and they rarely came back or they only came back on their own terms. So people were really kind of missing the why and why they should continue to do more or more often. So that's when we really pivoted in late 2018 and created this holistic approach that you see on the screen here. We really want people to understand why they should volunteer. So now on our kind of current platform, there's a lot of emphasis around storytelling, allowing the charities to actually share their lived experience, make announcements. And in a way, that's really good, clear information for volunteers to be aware of, so that they get a clearer sense of why they should continue to contribute. Secondly, we also found that by creating a neutral space we call a community, which is a place where we bring different like-minded people together, and not putting them in a kind of pressure situation where if you come onto the platform, you must volunteer. Otherwise, don't come on the platform. We feel that that is a lot closer to what the traditional kind of face-to-face volunteering model is, which is, we are actually based inside the Centre of Volunteering in New South Wales. And a lot of the time, the 50+ volunteers are coming together because they've got a relationship. They want to have afternoon tea, they've got a routine. Volunteer just happens to be the action they do after they form that community. And we really believe in kind of replicating that same effect. And then finally, of course, we go back to the action, which is the volunteering. But we think that, when you've got the why and you've got that community built, then the action and the participation would come just as a part of, being part of that environment. This is an interesting graph. So it took us about probably 3 to 4 years to articulate it to this point. We call this habit of building a habit of giving. And for us, it's that participation side. It's about providing the change makers with more choices and engagement points. So when we first started off, again, at TECH4Good, we were more the virtual side and skill-based side. And for us, and look, volunteering by and large are the higher commitment end. And we think that people who are highly committed on this end can actually, benefit from having more ways of engagement. So especially, let's say, with disruption like COVID-19, if you're only doing event-based volunteering or face-to-face and you have no other channels to engage with charities, you might lose engagement with them. But by providing them with kind of smaller commitment or more accessible opportunity to stay involved and stay engaged, you can keep that connection a lot further. Conversely, we will also want to grow the volunteer pool for the sector. And we believe a lot of people who have never kind of volunteered before found it really hard to go from zero to committing to volunteering. So what we do is on our platform, there's a lot of micro actions where we are trying to go, well, you never thought of this, but why don't you have a read of this? Or maybe your friends can refer you to the opportunity. So kind of building that into like a short-term action so that they get into the habit of going, oh yeah, I know what that charity does. So I know about that charity. So that when the right opportunity comes, they have a higher chance of actually engaging in volunteering as a whole. And that's really how our philosophy works. So tying all that together, this is literally a screenshot of our platform. We believe we provide a personalized experience for people to really kind of find their purpose and find something that really resonates with what they believe in. So on our platform, depending on the charities that they're associated with, they will be fed different things that they can get involved in. So my classic example is, if you are a volunteer from RCCA in your platform, we would also recommend opportunities and things to do from Guide Dogs Australia, because at the kind of basic level, you're here because you believe in animal welfare. You want to do something to help animals. So we would suggest other opportunities from Guide Dogs Australia, Save the Whale, any kind of animal welfare organizations, and put it onto your feed. So that's one thing. The other thing is we also want to take a more proactive approach. So rather than expecting volunteers to know exactly what they want or have the initiative to go and find something on the list, we want to actually suggest different things that they haven't thought about. Maybe they're bound by the geographic distance. So you only know the charities within that kind of 3 to 20 kilometer block, which is, I think, quite high in the latest research. We want to kind of branch out. Well, if you're helping an organization locally, why don't you help a similar organization in a different state if you have capacity? So that's kind of the bounds we want to stretch by going online. Finally, you see here is for those who have heard of United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, we've got a formal partnership with the UN to promote the SDGs. So everything on our platform is categorized by the SDGs down to the activity level, so that one, you can find the opportunity that's aligned to your SDGs. And from a not-for-profit and a corporate point of view, we can run reports and measure your impact based on the SDGs. So that's really how the platform works. So look, I'm not going to give you the whole 30 minutes it's not meant to be a sales pitch, but what I thought is I'll quickly go over to our platform just to show you kind of how it feels and what it looks like. So again, let me just jump from one window to another. There we go. Scott, just sanity check, are you on the platform?
Yep.
Great.
Yep, that's
so brilliant. So basically, it shouldn't look too unfamiliar for anyone who uses social media. And that's the point. We're not here to try to compete with Facebook. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel. But what we do want is, rather than people looking at content or being addicted to checking out cat videos or what did my cousin have for lunch, we want people to be addicted to reading purpose-driven stories and browsing things that are closely aligned to the SDGs or the causes they believe in. So on our platform, you've got private messages, you've got notifications that brings users back, and you've got FAQ and complaints handling and the usual kind of social media online platform setup. There we go. When you register, we only ask you for two things, which is the most important things. We ask you for contact details and a bit of your skills so that we can easily match you to volunteering. You can also edit your profile to add the SDGs that you believe in. And again, based on these three attributes, we create a news feed that's personalized. So you've got different kind of programs that, let's say, Starlight Foundation does. So we give you a bit of a brief on what they do. Again, it's that understanding of why. What are they doing? It's not just Starlight, it's the programs that they're doing and the people they touch that really makes a difference. And if I go back to just, again, because we're talking about virtual volunteering, I want to show you there we go. This is what virtual volunteering project could look like. So again, our bread and butter is skill-based volunteering, so we always start from there. And on our platform, you can engage in skill-based volunteering by just tapping into this an opportunity like this. And every project we will work with the VIO or the not-for-profit organization to identify what it is that you need and why does it make a difference. Each project is also linked back to one of your programs, so that again, it's reinforcing why does the completion of this project actually make a difference to your organization. And it's because it directly helps with this program. You can see the team, so this is relatively new, so there's only one admin there, but usually you see a team of volunteers who's involved. What kind of skills do you need? And we almost provide like a virtual working from home space for you to kind of outline the task that's involved. You can upload different files for each task so that really you can complete the whole virtual volunteering experience through the platform by submitting your solution as well. Now, of course, look, there's discussions and whatnot here. We don't stop people from picking up the phone or going on Zoom. I mean, that's just, you want people to complete the project and have a good experience. This is more like a place where you can kind of keep track of discussion or talking points, rather than just picking up the phone all the time. We appreciate that volunteers and volunteer managers might not work the same hours, so to speak. So this is one place to go to centralize all that. And then finally, you have some kind of quantitative and qualitative feedback that you can track per project. And these are the data that we feed it back to the not-for-profit organizations and all the corporate organizations that the volunteers come from. And then there's a bit of reporting at the end. The other bit I want to talk to you about, and again, this is kind of the broad brush of the platform, is really the community and from community and volunteering. So this is really the heart and soul of why we're here. So to imagine every organization, we will work with you to build an online community, and we work with you to engage your existing supporters and bring them onto the platform. We'll build up, I guess, a About Us page, and we try to align you to the SDGs that you're actually contributing to. So some might be all 17 because we're a facilitator, we are. Others might be just one or two. That's okay. Well, that's what we do in terms of onboarding you and helping you map the SDGs. What you also see here is a list of kind of affiliated organizations, and this is really probably the most powerful feature of this online environment, whereby if you are RSPCA and you're affiliated with Guide Dogs, anything from guide dogs that they need in terms of sharing stories, they need a volunteer here, there, they have a project to be done, that would automatically be fed into your so it's all about kind of collaboration. The other bits I won't go through too much details, but you have FAQ, you have a discussion board, you have a list of supporters, you have usually volunteer managers, and then finally there's also a resource. So basically a shared drive. Different organizations use it for different reasons. So some charities use it as a way to distribute flyers for an upcoming event, obviously probably not in this season. Other corporates use it as a way to go, look, if you want to go event volunteering, here's the form, fill it in and give it to HR. That's up to them on how they use it. So long and short is, this is basically what the platform does. It's a combination of online community building and virtual volunteering. And I'll just go back to my slide just to wrap up as well. Are there any things I need to get to, or we leave to the end? Here we go. So you've seen a bit of the platform. Now you're aware of our approach. I guess what I want to do is bring it all together. So how does this kind of technology actually tie back to the scenario that we're facing now? Well, I guess the short answer is it needs to be time appropriate. Here's a simple timeline that we've got from talking to some of our health-based charities that are trying to plan ahead. And I think it was highly relevant for the rest of the community sector as well. So for them, they see, I guess, this pandemic really coming to its end when there's a vaccine in sight. Whatever we're doing now is kind of minimizing the spread rather than trying to rid of the problem. That's from their perspective. But I guess from our point of view, the first stage at the moment, and I think most organizations are going through this at the moment, or hopefully we're kind of coming out of, it's about crisis management. And a lot of the opportunities that we should really focus on is around emergency volunteers. So warehousing, transport, deliveries of essential goods to people who are vulnerable or isolated. I know Volunteer Victoria and the other peaks have recently launched the emergency services, emergency volunteering platform. So that's not something that we do. And if you need help, go register on that platform. I think that's a great resource. We're also seeing a trend of skill-based volunteering opportunities that is becoming more prevalent. So I want to say selected because in general, skill-based volunteering is not the first thing charities will look at when you're in survival mode. You don't have time to build a database or refine this or that. It's certain skill-based volunteering opportunities that are coming to light. So from just, again, our basis of talking to our charities, the 4 areas that we see a growth in is marketing in terms of crisis fundraising, HR, if you're talking about workforce planning or restructuring, finance in terms of cash flow management, and legal, especially in employment law and governance. Those 4 areas are kind of high needs in the skill-based volunteering area. If I go to the next page, so pre-vaccine, the organizations that we're talking to basically are choosing between giving virtual a go or trying to kind of bog down and bunker down and outlast the crisis. So for us, it's more pivot or hibernate. And in this space, we found that for virtual volunteering, one of the key things you can do is to maintain stakeholder engagement. So for your staff and volunteers who might be isolated, who might have potential well-being issues, it might be the only outlet they ever had. So again, back to where we're located with the Center of Volunteering, there are 50 volunteers who some of them been there for like 12 or 17 years, where that one day a week is the only connection they have with the broader society, the broader community. That's something that virtual can hopefully replace or support in the current climate. The other part is also maintaining engagement with your funders and supporters. Some businesses are doing it hard and they might not donate for any time soon, but you don't want to kind of lose that relationship that you spend months and years building over time. So another thing that we can do is kind of keep raising the awareness and keep those supporters and funders engaged so that when things return to somewhat normal, you don't have to kind of rebuild it from scratch. Second and third thing is about, I guess, from a virtual volunteering point of view, it's about preserving your core services and deciding what you can bring online and what really you have to hibernate because you literally can't if it's a men's shed, so to speak. And then last but not least, corporate volunteering. So here's something that we just found from talking to probably a dozen or so corporates. Some are definitely focusing on bunkering down and doing business as usual. Others, there might be a lot of capacity in terms of people working from home with a bit of extra bandwidth that they wouldn't mind volunteering. I mean, bluntly speaking, there's only kind of so many trips you can go to Bunnings or so many shows you can show on Netflix. There is a potential there to tap into this capacity that maybe they're completely brand new volunteers that we haven't been able to engage because they've been too busy. Now is the time when they actually have a bit of time on their hands and we kind of have the captive attention to do volunteering, but in a virtual sense. And then last for post-vaccine, really it's about kind of rebuild and re-engage. I won't hypothesize about what kind of volunteering opportunities would be available at that kind of time frame, but we know that from talking to charities and also some of the peak bodies that we might need to start planning for a potential dip in our existing volunteer pool by up to 30%. So what we're thinking is up to 30% of the existing traditional volunteer pool might not come back because they're already onto another project or they kind of lost a bit of connection with the existing cohort. So how do we replenish that pool? And when we do, the demographic and the motivations will also be different. So how do we kind of attend to that? And then finally, kind of planning a bit of a reintroduction of face-to-face activities off the back of online activities. And I say that quite strictly. Online activity is going to be the norm for the next little while. So when it's safe to do so, we also need to find a way to reintroduce offline or face-to-face volunteer activities to blend in what we're already doing for the last kind of 3 to 6 months online. So maybe it's a hard question about, well, do we need to do everything offline? Maybe there are certain things that are better done virtually, and there are things that definitely need to on a face-to-face level. So look, just conscious of time, here's a simple table that I don't mind kind of distributing through VV a bit later. It's some of the opportunities that your volunteers can still participate remotely. It doesn't need to be a completely different model, and the fundamental volunteer process is still the same. So recruitment, induction, engagement, recognition, and retention, that still needs to be there regardless of whether you're doing it virtually or face-to-face. It's just the delivery channels are different. So for example, you can still recruit for board positions. It's just you need a system or kind of platform infrastructure to do it virtually. You might need better documentation and file sharing capacity, but it doesn't have to stop just because you can't meet face-to-face. Other things which are like events, we're seeing a growing number of online events popping up and down. You might still need people who do the organization and support, but instead of people coming to lend you their time and hands, you're looking for people who can help organize and facilitate virtual events. So there are people who specialize in those things. I'm certainly not one of them, but there are many who do this for a living, who might be kind of your new volunteers who can help out. So we're actually running a series of workshops to share our knowledge in virtual volunteering and online community building starting later this month. I mean, happy for you guys to come along and take part, and it might be something that we can talk to VB a bit later to share exactly how you do it from kind of our trial and error in the last 3 years. So back to our campaign, we've named it Virtually Together because we want to use technology to tackle social isolation. We want to connect the temporary isolated, so people working from home, like I mentioned, with a bit of bandwidth, with a bit of spare time, and we want to connect them with the people who are long-term isolated. And by that, I mean people in aged care and disability, migrants and refugees, or people suffering from mental health issues. I guess from a personal note, I think in my living memory, I think the gap between these two groups of stakeholders is closer than ever because there's a common point of feeling isolated. And we really want to leverage this opportunity and harness this kind of empathy and mobilize them to help the charities who are serving these vulnerable people in our society. So by the end of this campaign, this 6 months campaign, we will have built a community with over 300 charities, not-for-profit organizations, and over 10,000 volunteers who together can complete over 1,000 opportunities, make a lot of connections to really negate the social isolation effects. And we really believe that through the power of crowdsourcing and collaboration, we can help extend each other's reach and maintain public awareness on some of the social issues we've been advocating for many, many years, so that we don't get overshadowed by fear and I guess COVID-19 news and isolation issues. So just to wrap it up, if you're interested in joining our Virtually Together campaign and give online volunteering a go, please get in touch. There's a link at the bottom of my slide deck, and I'm sure we can kind of send out the information after the workshop today. And with your involvement, we can attract more people and more organizations to join our social movement. And for our crossing platform like ours, more people equals more impact. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Victor. What an informative session you've just given us there. So we've got a couple of questions, so we'll try and knock them off, and then we'll talk a little bit more generally and see how the Q&A develops. First question is, what sort of online events are you running or are you seeing?
Yeah, so there's a couple of different types of events that we are planning to run and we're also seeing. So most of the peak bodies are doing what they do best in terms of helping creating a safe space for volunteer managers to share their experience, to kind of share ideas and see how we can actually navigate through this tough time. That's the connection side. And there's a lot of kind of education-based events that are coming up, and we're going to run out in terms of sharing our experience in online community building and virtual volunteering. Other things we're going to try in kind of late May, early June would be around the online hackathon. So I want you to imagine skill-based volunteering in a group setting where you get skill volunteers and not-for-profit organizations coming together with a challenge, and you actually get people into teams of 4 to 6 to nut it out and completely virtually. So that's a hackathon. We do that quite often before COVID, and we're going to try to do it online as well, just to see how we can pivot. And then there's other things about community building and just having a safe space for people to, maybe volunteer together at the same time every week. That's something that I think, that kind of peer support could be quite helpful as well.
Excellent. Next question is, how does Communiteer fit with my organization's existing social media presence?
Yeah, great question. So we're definitely not here to replace Facebook. So every not-for-profit organization, we actually encourage them to keep doing what they're doing at Facebook, because that's more like your external hook to get more people who are not already connected to you to come. What we do instead is whatever you're posting in Facebook, we're actually getting you to post in our community. So this is more about retention and keeping your existing supporters engaged. And obviously through our platform, there are other like-minded people who would resonate with the content you're actually posting to join your community as well. So one is kind of one is almost like internal large community facing.
So feel free to come back with any more Q&A, folks. While we're kind of fishing for any questions, Victor, what do you think was the secret sauce to your success with the World Summit Awards?
I wish there was a simple answer. It was a 6-month process. It was a very competitive field. I love it and do something that's innovative and different. And I guess we've got quite clear, unique selling proposition of adding value from an SDGs point of view and measuring against that, and really that scalable approach. So we weren't ever here to try to disrupt or replace the good work that the sector is already doing. So that's why we really want to push the technology to something that not only complements existing offerings, but make it more scalable and get more people involved.
Great. A couple more questions here. Encourage them to keep coming along. How can Communiteer help me with my fundraising?
So you will see on that graph that the middle bit is around kind of fundraising, donation, etc. We've actually been working on an integration piece with another platform provider who's quite prominent in the fundraising corporate giving space. That's coming at the end of May, early June. So stay tuned. It will be an integration setup. So any kind of change makers from our platform will be able to access donation and fundraising and vice versa. So that, again, it's about tapping into the crowd to get the resources, mobilize them to the VIOs in need. Great.
Next question is, why should I share my volunteers? And sorry for being blunt about it.
Well, no, it's probably our top 3 questions. Great. So, look, I think from a philosophical standpoint, for me, it's if there was one sector that was built for sharing so that we can actually come together against a common cause, it is the not-for-profit sector. I'm not saying for all the not-for-profit organizations, but I believe a large number of it, our purpose should be about solving the problem that we're trying to fix forever, not prolonging our own survival, right? So that's why we build this kind of sharing economy. The other one is more purely economical. So if you imagine there's 10 organizations who are all contributing to mental health, if they each bring 100 supporters together, they're not suddenly just going to lose touch with their 100. In fact, you're actually going to have a group of 1,000 who are highly engaged in mental health issues and can see a broad variety of ways that you can engage in doing social good for mental health. And we believe that that's actually a much stronger connection than if you were trying to just maintain engagement with your own 100.
Great. It's an interesting point, isn't it, in regards to, dare I say, ownership of volunteers. It's a bit of a thorny issue that comes up every now and then, whether there is such a thing, or whether we should be, like you say, kind of opening up the sort of the capacity for volunteers to move more freely to provide that sort of structural change. Next question is, how do you report on the SDGs?
Good question. I don't want to show you any more slides. I'll try to describe the best I can. You will have noticed on our platform that every content and every activity is mapped against an SDG of some sort. So what we actually do is whenever an organization comes on board, whether it's for-profit or not-for-profit, we actually work with you to identify the programs that you're running. So these might be for for housing organization. You might have women's refuge. You might have financial literacy training. You might have employment connections to another organization. All these programs are mapped to the SDGs fundamentally, so that basically any projects or any content you create will be mapped to the SDGs that your organization is contributing to. And therefore, if I was a volunteer and I just help you with, let's say, fixing a spreadsheet, but that spreadsheet actually helps you, improve your financial literacy program, and thereby gets you furthering your mission, you can say that that contribution that the volunteer has made is contributing to that. So that's kind of our impact chain. Happy to talk more in detail, but really it's about mapping that and doing that tough work when you first come in, and we'll work on that with you, so that when you switch on the report, you can actually report back and go, well, I wonder, how many projects and how many volunteers actually helped us further along in SDG 3 or SDG 10. We can kind of reverse report it back down the chain.
Great. And another question here is, are you able to provide any reporting capabilities on the impact you are making?
Yeah, so I could interpret that question in a few ways. So I think in terms of reporting requirements, I would say the corporates are probably has the highest number of requests, so to speak. So what they normally ask for is, the usual hours, who did what was the experience like. So that's pretty basic. We actually can provide reports to the next level, which is about what type of projects did they do, which charity was it for, what skills do they use, and actually broaden it to beyond skill-based volunteering. So it could be discussion activities, it could be how many people read a particular piece of content. Those things are all kind of reinforcing the social awareness piece, and we can provide a report around that to the corporate side. So we've spent a fair bit of time building the back end to capture that data, and we're still working our way of how to actually present meaningful information based on all these data that we're capturing. So if you've got a specific questions around, can we capture X, let us know.
Great. Here we go. Next question. What is the key differentiator between you and the other platforms that are out there?
Yeah, good question. I think I'll start with saying that, look, there's 600,000 not-for-profits in Australia. So, I think even if all the platforms out there in Australia are maximizing or quadrupling their capacity, we probably wouldn't be able to service all 600,000 in the near future, right? So I think all of us are kind of playing our part in trying to do the same thing, but maybe in different ways. So I think our two distinct bit is we're a crowdsourcing platform. So we believe in that really scalable model. And it's about sharing who you know and what you've got, so that everyone can kind of get the best of what they can from the community. The other part is, I guess, especially in this kind of time where social distancing practices need to be adhered to, you can see from just our quick demo that we've got the facilities on our platform to allow stakeholders to actually complete a volunteering opportunity via platform. So you don't have to go out and use an email if you don't want to. You don't have to pick up the phone. You don't have to go somewhere else to post messages, etc. That's how we interpret as a complete virtual volunteering experience, so that you don't have to go and do 4 or 5 different things to get there. And that's a point of difference that we want to stress quite strongly as well. So
excellent stuff. Look, unless there's any more questions, we'll look to wrap it up. So we'll give it another minute. I'm just going to put myself on mute as I do a cough. Hang
on. You all right, Scott?
Yeah. No, trust me, it's not COVID. Not that I'm aware of yet. Just an isolated cough, a little tickle in the throat. Before I suggest anything else that makes it look like COVID. Look, Victor, thanks so much for your time this afternoon. It's really delightful to understand what Communiteer is focusing on in its current campaign of Virtually Together. Really kind of capitalises on the fact that we are in a tenuous space as we kind of redefine what is the I get tested, Scott. Thank you very much. A tenuous time, because there are concerns from volunteer involving organisations about their engagement with their volunteers. What does that look like now and into the future? And really, what can fundamentally, structurally be done to change volunteering for the better? And a platform like Communiteer could really offer some sense of direction for those that are asking that same question. Victor, we've got another question. How important is it to have a community and not just a social media page?
New one, actually. I guess if you look at community more broadly, the whole point of you having a social media page is to kind of broaden your community. Like all VIOs would have their own community. It's more whether you see them face to face or whether you're trying to use social media to kind of grab them and get them into your pool. So I kind of see them going hand in hand. One is more, again, external facing and getting more people to come in. Others are kind of maybe even having afternoon tea every week. That's to kind of maintain and keep your existing community engaged.
Great. Okay. Look, any final thoughts, Victor, or how you feeling about what we've gone over today?
Oh, no, not at all. So look, appreciate the opportunity to share where we're up to, and of course our Virtually Together campaign. We're actually having some quite good success even in the first 3 weeks of launching, with several government coming on board. So look, this only really works when there's a critical mass. We're all about crowdsourcing. So if you want to give it a go, there's no cost to not-for-profit organization. Sign up or just make an inquiry and we can answer any other questions you might have.
Very good. Right. Well, for those that have been attending, thanks very much for your engagement today. These sessions will continue every Tuesday afternoon at 2 o'clock. We've got about 10 or 11 of these Tech4Good platform webinars scheduled. So today's been with Victor Lee from from Communiteer. And look, thanks again, Victor. And everyone will get an email tomorrow to talk about more of your campaign. So look, all the best, and thanks very much for your engagement, everybody. Cheers.
Thank you.